Well, hi, everyone, and thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. We've been looking forward to this for a while. And over the last 34 years, we have developed a lot of information. And what we really are looking forward to doing is sharing information with you through a series of webinars. And this will be the first of a number of programs that we'll do online so that we can partake of the information about sacred geometry that we've been developing over the years. And what are you doing there? Gregory's adding some lights here. Okay, so what we'll do in this webinar is we'll start out with Gregory is going to be doing a slideshow, and he'll get more into the specific information. And I guess I didn't start out by saying I'm Gail Hogan. This is my husband, Gregory. And there we go. And so he'll start out with a webinar, rather with a slideshow that goes over why is it that we're all so attracted to sacred geometry? What are the implications in our life? What is it about sacred geometry, the patterns, the rhythms, the flows that are intrinsically known to us? And they certainly are something that we've known over the years make a big difference in our health, our well-being, our level of consciousness, all of that. So it's really a very fascinating ride to be working with sacred geometry. So Gregory's going to start out with some basic information today, and then we will be building on that more and more in future webinars. During the session, we would like you to use the feature of for Q&A in the chat function. And if you will type in some of your questions, we'll be able to see that, field some of those questions, and then during his talk, as appropriate, we'll answer some of those questions. So please interact with us because we love that, and that just makes it juicier, and we learn from that as well. We are broadcasting to you energetics. We have a lot of different sacred geometry tools that are here in our home, on our land. And so we have some setups that are captured really on video. I mean, we've done this so many different times where when we have those energetics going, people feel them. So we suggest that you just take a few moments and just notice that and allow yourself to experience the flow of that energy. I will, at a point when Gregory's finished his presentation, I'll do a short meditation. And I think that'll be a nice way to kind of wrap things up. We'll have a few more questions after that, if you like. And then we will wrap up the program with a very special offer. So please stay with us, stay tuned. This is being recorded. So if for some reason you need to leave early, you can come back. We'll have a link that we'll send out to you. And we are really looking forward to getting started and letting this be something that we'll continue to do with you. So again, thank you. And I'm going to hand it over to Gregory.
Thank you. So I want to get right into this because we have only a little bit of time, and it's such a big subject. And I could go on for weeks and weeks. But what we really want to get into your consciousness today is talking about starting with this very famous equation by, of course, Einstein, and that was E equals mc squared. And in this equation, just to understand it simply, we all understand that the E is for energy, and that energy is equal to mass, which is virtually everything in the universe that you see, everything that you can touch, everything that you can bump into. When you take that mass and you multiply it times the speed of light, which is a tremendously big number, 186,000 miles per second. And there are studies being done now which are bumping the speed of light up even more into over 600,000 miles per second. And so it's almost unlimited, the speed of light. But when you multiply that times itself, times everything that you see in this universe, that's a tremendous amount of energy. And that's the point. What we're trying to get across is said here in another statement from scientists, and that is that 99.99999% of everything that we consider to be matter is really empty space. Because when you look at matter, and by that I mean you dive right deep into an atom and you look at the nucleus of the atom and you look at the electron and you consider all the space in the atom, that's the 99.99999%. And that means that when you are looking out at this screen, watching us, looking at everything in this world, you're only seeing 0.00001% of what's really there. And so the more we start realizing that this is a lot like a picture of us that I'm using as a metaphor. And what I'm trying to say with this image is that you and I are like icebergs, where only a small bit is showing up here in this reality. And so that's 10% of the iceberg, and the other 90% is unseen. So like an iceberg, but let's turn it over so that we get a better perspective, because really the bigger part of you created this part that is seen. You see, scientists today look at just the little part, the visible part that we can see, the tip of the iceberg, and they are saying that that tip inside your head, you're creating the rest of this reality. You've created the rest of the iceberg from the small bit that shows up here. But that doesn't make any sense. It really is the other way around. It's the largest part of ourselves, the unseen part of ourselves, that precipitates into this reality and into our bodies, which is one reason why the mystics call this around us an illusion, because it is only a small part of reality. So here I've taken that iceberg and I've broken it into soul at the top and then multiple dimensions, because that's really what we're talking about. When we talk about the bigger part of ourselves, we're talking about the multidimensional aspect of what it is to be a human being. So that means that on the very bottom, we have the physical, the solid, the liquid, the gas. That's down here in the physical. Right next to the physical body, we have the etheric field, which is that energetic field that surrounds the body, which is still invisible, but it's part of the physical. It's because it's interphasing with the physical so strongly. It's that part of the etheric field that even Einstein referred to as the medium through which everything else, all the energy of the universe, is conducted. But this multidimensional part is not totally unfamiliar to us. When you look at the 4D astral, that's the next dimension up. That's where the emotions hang out. That's where some people are able to see the colors of an aura and can see when two people sit next to each other that their energy fields blend. That when they get upset, there seems to be more red. When they seem to be calm, there's more green in that aura. And we even paint rooms green colors to try to calm people down. And that's happening through the emotional body, which is part of the astral, the multidimensional aspect of our being. And then the mental, that's where we can go into the future, into the past, and at the speed of thought. Some people can actually tune into that and see what might be coming around the corner. Get that feeling that's coming into them, that intuition. And so we're familiar with these aspects of our multidimensional body, but what we're wanting to do is expand it, move more into that larger part of ourselves and take command of our full sense of who we are. And see, one of the main reasons, and here I have another little metaphor showing the ship, that soul connected by a lifeline to the human being. That's us down here. And without that connection to soul, we wouldn't exist. We wouldn't even survive. But when we open to the flow of energy that's coming through from soul, through all these different dimensions, that opens up everything in our lives. That's where your health and well-being comes from. When you block that flow, that's where you get sick. That's where you don't feel good. That's where you're missing the love and joy in your life. It's when you open to that higher part of yourself that you find the wisdom and the creativity and your ability to manifest and create. And all the conflict in your life seems to disappear. So does the stress when we're able to go into deep meditation because we're connecting to that bigger part of ourselves. That's where mindfulness, the inner peace comes from, all the connection. And so when we are able to connect to the bigger part of ourselves, that's where we're able to connect to the truth of who we are, and we're able to start to communicate and be fully operating as human beings. So, something else to really understand is that there are no causes in this dimension. It's only the effects of what was initiated on the higher dimensions. And that's very, very powerful. I mean, think about that. When anything in this reality happens, manifests, it's really something that's only the result of having been started on a mental level, your thoughts about it first, your emotional body began that whole process, or it happened on a soul level, it happened on a karmic level, some other higher level finally brings us back into a manifestation of what's happening here.
I think that's a really, really important piece of taking that deeply into the way we conduct our lives. Because what it says to me is that it's really about soul, because soul is the multidimensional aspect of who each one of us is. And then, you know, our physical is really a projection from that. So the more that I operate from that greater connection, that connection not only of my soul, but the soul of each person that I'm in relationship with, the soul of the universe, you know, the essence of what's out here in nature, then that experience is so much deeper and so much more nurturing. And so, you know, when something isn't going right in our lives, so many times I know that the way that I've been programmed is to look at, well, how do I take care of it from the smaller part of who I am? But this is a statement that says when we take care of it, or we look to work with the higher part of who we are, that's really where the greatest impact is.
And that's why meditation is so important in allowing you to connect to the bigger part of yourself. And so, back to this thought and what we're talking about now and want to bring in is that source, soul, where everything comes from in the entire universe. It resonates with this physical dimension and all the other dimensions. And when I say resonates, it's similar to a C tuning fork, that when you play a C tone, that tuning fork starts to vibrate. And Source is moving into our lives through and into everything in creation through number and pattern and frequency, cycle and time. All of this comes down to what we call sacred geometry. It's the entire space-time continuum, and it includes everything, absolutely everything. Here is a model created called the amplituhedron. And what it is a geometric object that has been discovered to be applicable in creating all particle interactions. And it can be done so much more simply than the pages and pages and pages of calculations that were needed before. A couple of scientists were able to graph it onto a geometry, and that's shown the bare bones at the right. And David Wilcock, an author, was able to point out that this is actually 25% of a star tetrahedron, which is one tetrahedron pointing up through another tetrahedron. And then a couple of other scientists from Poland were able to photograph an actual photon. That is the single most basic unit of light. So what we're seeing here is that light itself is geometric. So here's taking the star tetrahedron and turning it on its side, you can see the similarity with the photon. Now, expressing it in another way, if we take that star tetrahedron, the center part of it, when you connect the points where each line crosses, you get an octahedron. And then when you connect all the points, you get a cube. And this is known as Metatron's cube. But what is shown now in the center of this picture are two images that were made by a method called cymatics. And this was done by a Swedish scientist, Hans Jenny. And what is of interest here is that these two images were done on a flat plate where the frequency was changed and it moved from one shape to another shape. And so it's noted in all the books that, oh, we moved from one shape to another because we changed the frequency. But what really happened, as you can see from the two images that just came up, these are two different views of the same geometry, Metatron's cube. So what happened by changing the frequency was not a new image, but it was a different view of the same image. But that image was here on a flat plate. So what we actually were doing was we were tapping in to the 3D reality of sound and looking at it from different perspectives. Because when we build a model, like you can see down in the lower parts of the picture, we can see these are the two views of this three-dimensional model. And this brings us to a couple of other really important points. And that is that when you want to affect reality, the way sound works, the way light works, the way everything in our reality works, it works with three-dimensional energies. And even going on, they go into fourth, fifth, higher dimensional aspects. But if we want to affect change in this reality, we need to work with three-dimensional aspects of reality. The 2D pictures that we have in books, the picture of Metatron's cube that we see when we Google Metatron's cube on the internet, they're almost all two-dimensional. And even though they're very instructional and they're pretty to look at, they don't carry much energy. Because if you take a two-dimensional image and you turn it sideways, it disappears. Now, something else to notice is when we look at these center images that were created by Hans Jenny, is that where you see the image, the white part, those are the lycopodium powder particles. Those are the small bits of material that were forced into those corners by the energy. The energy is in the blank spaces. So think of it this way. If you had a room that you never cleaned and you were always walking through that room, after a short while, all the dust bunnies and dirt would collect in the corners of the room. And where the energy is, where everything is going on, is where nothing is seen. So think of your reality. Everything you're looking at is the absence of where the energy is. You have to look between the lines to find the energy. You have to look into the spaces. You have to initially, as a human being, go inside to the bigger part of yourself to find the light of God and where the energy truly resides. So now I want to talk about something where we can segue from how light demonstrates sacred geometry, sound demonstrates, and something I wanted to share with you before, and I forgot, was that the human body and everything in creation follows patterns of energy. And so this is something that measures something called the phi ratio. And what that means is that the middle finger, you can see the digit at the end of my finger to my whole finger, this little part to this part is in the phi ratio. And if I take my finger to my hand, that's also in the phi ratio. And my hand to my elbow is in the phi ratio, and my head to my navel to my feet. That's what Leonardo was drawing in that picture that we saw when I was talking about sacred geometry, the Vitruvian Man, as it's called. And so everything in creation is working with sacred geometry, including time. And so that's what I am going to be pointing out here, is that the Earth itself has a wobble. Some scientists believe it's because of the bulge on the planet, the moon. There is a wobble that creates precession. And there are other scientists that believe we are orbiting around some dark star or another nearby star, Sirius. Nevertheless, we are in this rotational field that's moving us through a full circuit every 25,920 years. And so that means that each sign of the zodiac, we pass through it in 2,160 years. So this is what's happening right now in the changing of the ages. We are moving into Aquarius. And the calendars of the Mayans, they said we were leaving the old system, moving into the new system. The Egyptian calendar also works with this. The Sumerian calendars, many of the Vedic and Asian calendars. So many parts of the world are working with this long period of time because it's resonant with sacred geometry. And this was passed down by the Atlanteans when their culture was succumbed. They went over to a number of places around the planet to work with the Mayans, to work with the Egyptians, to work with different cultures, to pass on their knowledge. And this was one of the things that was passed on. Now, something I want to share with you here is that when you look at a square, a pentagon, all these different geometries, and you see the number of degrees in a square, with each corner being 90 degrees, that 360 degrees divides evenly into the great year. So the interesting thing is, when you look at an angle, you are looking at the energy, the relationship between the sides. So we're really looking at the space by looking at degrees. And so 360 degrees in the square, that's 360 degrees in a circle. And the Egyptians, the Mayans, all of them worked with a 360-day year. Now, another interesting thing is that all of these different degrees, when you look at them, they break down into certain divine numbers: 36, 54, 72, and 108. And all of these numbers can be found in the Pentagon. And that's why the Pentagon is such a sacred form that works with these particular numbers, which all work with the phi ratio, which works with the way your body's constructed, down to your DNA itself. So your DNA is reflecting this phi ratio structure in the number of spacings of the spirals and the way the spirals are laid out. You are an antenna system for the way the universe is working with life energy. So we can get more into this next slide, and let's carry on right now with what else you want to share.
Okay. All right. Phew.
I was trying to do that very, very quickly.
You know, I think one of the things whenever I listen to this information is the recognition that everything is about relationship and nothing has any meaning without something else. And aren't we structured that way? You know, that we are set up to be in relationship with who we are, with each other, with the universe, with you know, all aspects of what we're here for. And sacred geometry really points that out. I know for me, one of the things that intrigued me before I met Gregory, just as an artist, I really started to look deeply in nature, and not only using my eyes, but using my intuition, my feelings. And I was just so overtaken with joy and true ecstasy sometimes at the absolute beauty, the elegance, and the perfection of how nature operates. And I think each one of us knows that when you find that beautiful space in nature, you're in resonance, you're in relationship with all that is. You're in relationship with the connections that you can make. And then we have access to the higher dimensions of who we are. And so sacred geometry is really a journey that brings that to us. And in some ways, you know, some of the structures that we work with are skeletons in a way, and then they get to be fleshed out in more deep ways. But at the core, there's something there that keeps communicating with us that we're so much more than what meets the eye. And that's, you know, that's really an important thing when we're in a time right now that appears to be so very divisive. And I look at this time as something that in order for there to be breakthrough, it's essential that there is breakdown. That's just the way things work. And it's really okay. I mean, it's difficult, it's painful at times to experience those breakdowns. And the important thing is to keep cognizant of the connections that we really have. And so, you know, this kind of information, I believe that the tools that we have that help us stay deeply connected are absolutely, you know, essential for my well-being so that I can navigate through this time so that it makes some sense really with some of the things that are, you know, rather unusual that appear to be going on our planet. So do you think this is a good time to do a little meditation?
Let me share a little bit.
Okay.
And I'm not sure what. I just was being prompted from inside. You see, Gail and I have been working with these energies and working with sacred geometry as a business for 34 years this year. And we were working with it long before that. And it began for me, not from things that I read. I was building things and I didn't even know that they had names, some of them. But I started working with higher dimensional energies, as Gail did when I went through a lot of Kundalini. And the beings that we work with are outside of our dimensional system. They're far in advance of where we are in consciousness. And their interest is in being of service to human beings and helping us all grow in love and in unity. because this is our purpose for having a human body and being here at this time. Certainly the world is in much, much turmoil right now. But as Gail said, you know, this is the breakdown so that there's room for the breakthrough to happen. And the knowledge that we're given all the time and what to build and how to work with these tools, it's coming from these beings who fed it to us when we were in Atlantis. And so many of these tools were used in Atlantean times, the sacred geometry. Because as what I just went through with this slideshow, as you can see, every single part of the electromagnetic spectrum can be understood through geometry. All the frequencies have particular numbers that vibrate with divine aspects of being. And it's only when we get into human beings thinking that they are gods of everything and can build whatever they want, that we have the kinds of buildings and the kinds of structures and the kinds of things that we create today that are not conscious of how it fits in to the bigger picture, how it's part of the whole. Because when we are part of the whole, then we are supported by the whole. And this is the main reason that we're here on this planet at this time, so that we can discover that love that we are, that unity that we're connected to, and allow that unity to move through us into this world to make a difference. And when we're doing that, when we're serving all that is, understanding that we are part of all that is, then we are served by that unity as well. And that's the highest form of action that a human being can take. And it's that love, that understanding that I think we can go into now in this meditation that Gail wants to share with you.
Thank you. That was a beautiful introduction to what it is that I would like to share with you. And while we are doing this meditation, what you'll see on screen, rather than just looking at me, you're going to see some geometries that are spinning. And they're, you know, that's a wonderful way to just move into, you know, somewhat of a meditative space. You're also welcomed to close your eyes. Do whatever is relaxing and gentle and really works for you. Okay, so Gregory, are we ready to
Yes.
switch over on that? Okay, so let's begin by relaxing and breathing together.
Just a
nope,
moment.
We're not quite there yet.
I'm trying.
Technical. We have technical issues here. Okay. And let's see if we can get this to move over. And if not, we'll still do it. Oh, there we go.
I'll make it.
There we go. And there's some beautiful colors in this too.
These were
All right.
clouds that were happening in our backyard one day.
Okay, we got it going. There we go. Great. All right. So let's begin by relaxing and breathing together. Get into a comfortable position and take a deep breath. Envision that we are creating a coherent field together to encircle the earth with loving energies. We are entering a geometric field constructed with our intention of love. Just imagine what that feels like, what that looks like. The compassion and the well-being for all. Breathe in and now let go on the out-breath of what no longer serves. Breathe in that beautiful, clean, refreshing, regenerative air, and breathe out what's ready to move on, what no longer serves. Together, we will continue to build this field of unity and co-create an environment of physical vibrations for the good of all life on the planet. And this field is moving out, and together our energies are connecting and bringing this into a more powerful field. We are being asked to step up to live through the heart with our higher knowing. Choose now to embody the width and breadth of the real human potential. Be here now with all you are. Fresh and powerful energy is bathing the earth to assist in this awakening. A new story is evolving as illusions which don't serve are set free from awareness and replaced with love, compassion, and unity. When we see discord and pain in our lives, it is a signal for us to generate more love and more light. Breathe and let go as you harmonize with the higher vibrations of love and compassion for the good of all. Many beings from multiple levels are supporting this work to raise the frequencies of Earth. It is our engagement that is being called forth now. The angels, masters, and guides from the higher realms are supporting our efforts. However, we are being activated to ground higher consciousness, raising the earth frequencies to a level that nurtures the evolution of all life. Through the energy broadcasts of the causal generator that we're running, together we are sending out vibrational messages, all of us, to the earth and all sentient life that awakens the inner knowing to come together in love, compassion, and light. We are awakening that inner knowing that we are spiritual beings with a mission and purpose to shatter the illusions and collectively shift into service for the good of all. We are building the quantum field with this consciousness. Let us breathe together as we envision circling the earth with these sacred geometries, the unity grid and the star dodecahedron, and the beautiful forms that you see before you. These geometries are building components of the earth grid and all life involved in this metamorphosis. Breathe together and feel the resonance as we raise the light potential and anchor the structure that is grounding more love into the earth plane. The geometries stimulate that seed memory. It was implanted into all life forms. The internal light and sustenance of love are awakening and providing the nourishment for growth. We are all part of this higher alignment. Breathe through the heart. And feel the light penetrate deeply. We ground this high frequency structure to rest in Gaia and continue to grow with your nurturing and your love. Feel the power of this unified field as we close our meditation. And you may see beautiful visual images. Perhaps you'll hear universal music as the earth grid takes this energy into each of its vortices and relays it through the planet. Feel the love and blessings. And now just take another deep breath. And prepare to come back to this program.
I'm going to bring you in.
Oh, thank you for joining us with this. When we put our energies together, it's so potent. And the more that we recognize the opportunities that we have to co-create together, to use our creative sources, the more and more that we contribute to this beautiful planet. And so, Gregory, are you ready to take this back again?
Sure.
Good.
Okay, so thank you. We've got quite a setup here, and it's working, which is always nice. Sometimes, as you know, computers can be very finicky. So what I wanted to share with you now is, yay, we can get over there. We have the picture of soul, the metaphor for soul connecting to us through all these layers, that lifeline. There are things in this reality that are very insistent beyond just our density and our lack of understanding. There are things outside of us that make it very difficult to connect. And that's where all the electromagnetic pollution is adding to the difficulty of the energy flowing into our lives. And if there's any disease that comes from that, or from the stress that builds up, science and doctors are finally admitting to the fact that stress, anger, certain emotions do feed into heart disease. And it's because that stress is blocking the flow of that energetic flow from the bigger part of yourself, as well as all the negative emotions, all the aspects of fear. They really fall under that one moniker, fear. And so the sadness, the guilt, the pride is a soft form of it, but these are aspects that block the flow of higher self from coming through. Judgments, as we all are beginning to realize, the more we judge another, the more we separate ourselves from them, the more we separate ourselves from unity and from everything that is. And of course, the toxins and pollution in our environment are inescapable today. So there's no way to escape all these blockages. But what we have found is that by working with certain aspects of our tools, we are able to wipe out the effects of stress and electromagnetic pollution and fear and judgment, and even the toxins in our environment that disconnect us don't have the ability to disconnect us anymore. And this is something that we've shown in a lot of tests. We've had scientists do scientific studies with our tools, and this is one case where the subjects do not know what they're holding or why they're holding it, but this is a measure of their energetic field with something called a gas discharge, a GDV visualization. And by holding an iConnect for just 5 minutes, all the holes filled in, and they not only filled in, they became stronger and more energy was coming there to heal the situation. And here's another reading where we see that someone's liver is underactive, their spleen is almost shut down, and in a matter of only a few minutes of hanging on to a form called the iConnect, everything came into the balance zone. So that's what starts happening with connection. Your body starts moving into a balanced state, not only physically and physiologically, but mentally, emotionally, and most importantly, spiritual connection starts happening, starts flowing through. So that's what's shown here with all of these different tools that we work with. I often muscle test people, and that's so much fun because, you know, when I muscle test someone and have them think of something, and you can do this yourself, where you think of something that makes you happy or upset, and you get very weak because you disconnect. And then when I put one of these tools in their hand, they connect immediately. And so that's what sacred geometry has the power to do. It's got the power to connect us to the bigger part of ourselves. And so that's what we're doing with these tools that have been divinely guided for
A long time.
45 years. And, you know, we've been doing it. It's like there's going to be a channeling that we're going to put up next week with Gail. And it's going to be fun because it's coming from the beings that work with us from outside of this dimensional realm.
So we have a question that just came in for you. And
Okay.
this is from Victoria, and she's asking, I was wondering how the sacred geometry works in your heart companion pendant. Is it 2D? Great question.
Okay. Now, I don't have the slides to show this, but if you look onto our images, they're two-dimensional on the surface, but in the first one, the iConnect, you can see that there's an image, a triangular shape formed between the top image and the two bottom images. And what we found is that when you take 3 different perspectives of a 3-dimensional form, like when we were looking at, let me see, do I have something up here? I do. So when I take something like, here's a cube, but when you look at the cube from the face side, it's a square. From the edge perspective, you get this long rectangle and 2 smaller rectangles. Those are very precise. If I were to divide the long side by the short side, I would have exactly the square root of 2. And when I look at it on point, maybe you can see it against my sweater a little more easily. You see how we have something that looks like a hexagon? And there, if I measure the height and the width, I'm going to have the square root of 3. So what I'm saying is that just like house plans, if you were only given 2 dimensions, you wouldn't be able to build the whole house. And so by taking a 3-dimensional form and projecting these 3 perspectives from the point, the edge, and the face of that geometry onto a non-conductive surface, in this case I use fiberglass, and I put the image in copper on top of it, and then I surround the whole piece with a circle. And that's what you have here. You have that making a unity out of that geometry. So I have an analog to 3-dimensional energies that are done 2-dimensionally on the iConnect. And because you see 9 images there on the surface, that means there are 3 different geometries involved. And these are double-sided circuit boards. So I have more inside the circuit board as well, more geometries. So that's one reason that they're so powerful, is I can work with a 2-dimensional construct, but I work with it in a way where it carries the energy of a 3-dimensional form. And so when you have Metatron's cube shown from those 3 perspectives, you would have a full Metatron's cube, providing you do it so it's conductive on a non-conductive background. The circle around it creates the unity. That's why in all ancient traditions, they would draw a circle around it. The Hindi design for the heart chakra is a 6-pointed star with a circle around it to symbolize the top 3 chakras and the bottom 3 chakras coming together in the heart. And so you're very astute in seeing that we do have 3-dimensional images that are, or 2D images, but they work with 3D energy. So that's the difference with what we've done here.
Thank you. That was interesting.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? We're kind of getting towards the end of, it's been just about an hour that we've been going. If there are any other questions, go ahead and type them into the chat box right now. We'll be looking for that. And we also want to let you know, like we said earlier, that we're going to be doing some more webinars. And something that is really valuable to us is hearing from you and learning what questions you have. If you have a thought for a topic you would like us to focus on, particular questions, all of that is really supporting us, because we've got lots of information and can go in through a lot of directions. So your feedback is what we're really asking for here. And so what we're going to offer you in relationship with that, oh, and here is, but let me just, we're going to get into a couple more questions, but let me just tell you this, that we will be offering anyone who will send us an email with questions, with suggestions, with comments, you know, whatever, we will give you a 15% discount on the purchase of Heart Companions and iConnects. And Greg, do you have a slide we'll show you a slide with our website address and with our email that you can email us. We would really, really appreciate hearing from you. Can you get there?
Trying to, there we are.
Okay, did you get there yet? No. There we go. Okay, so that's www.iconnecttoall.com. That's our website. And office@iconnecttoall.com. In case you're not seeing the visual, that's iconnect, the number 2, all, all.com. And okay, so we do have a couple more questions that have just come in. And so the first one here is how to overcome 5G. And so I'm going to, would you like to take that?
Sure.
I bet you would.
So it's very interesting what's going on in the world right now. And what we showed you before, that slide that showed how fear blocks the flow of energy from source. It grounds you into the physical and allows you to become vulnerable. So the way to overcome 5G and all the other problems, it's basically to make that connection to higher self in your life. It's another form of energy. I heard a very interesting story the other day, and that was from a woman who lived in Russia, and she was in a town where one of the earlier nuclear sites was located. Now, this was early on in their process, and so what happened was they had difficulties and a lot of radiation was leaked. And curiously, or not so curiously, a lot of people got very sick. There were problems. But the curious part was that this woman, along with quite a number of other people, did not only avoid problems and get sick, their immune systems seem to improve. So they don't get sick under any circumstances now. So that's very curious. It's really working with the energy. And so you
Yeah, I think it's important that sometimes with new technologies, what tends to happen is people move into a fearful state, like, you know, how are we going to deal with this? And honestly, the fear is more of the difficulty, the problem, oftentimes than other things. So that is very important to just really understand that, as Gregory is pointing out, there are ways that we adapt. We're designed for adaptation. It's really quite interesting. And there are things that we can certainly do to keep ourselves more healthy. I don't want to be living anywhere near one of a big generator of energy. Those power sources are definitely negative. However, finding balance, finding a place where, the 5G, I think, is just, it is going to happen. You know, more and more technology and information is coming into the planet. So to me, the big question is, how can we best adapt? How can we keep ourselves healthy, happy, prosperous? What are the solutions? And avoid the fearful states that some people kind of go into. So I think that's really very important.
We find it's very important. We eat a lot of cleansing things to get radiation out of our body. It's part of our natural diet to work with lemon water, to work with a lot of greens. We avoid sugar. We avoid carbohydrates. Most carbohydrates, all the grains, just because we found that our bodies don't react well and put on weight when we eat them. And we live in an environment that we've chosen to live in because we don't like environment with a lot going on, a lot of energy. It's incredibly luscious where we live. I look outside at night and it's dark. I look to the west, I look to the south, I look to the east and the north. There's almost nothing around us but just the mountains and the cliffs and the animals that visit. So this is how we've chosen to create our life. And if you are in a situation where it's challenging, don't let the challenge bring you down in a negative way. That's
Definitely.
the most important
That
thing.
really is, because when it comes down to it, the power is not outside of us so much. You know, we keep wanting to focus that way, but a lot of what Gregory's presentation showed is that we are amazing and powerful beings as we are connected when we're really working on those higher levels of who we are. That to me is the real solution. And there's one other question before we close that is a great question, and I want to pose it, and that is, will there be a time when we will not need to wear pendants or tools? And you know, that's a great question. You know, being in a human body, it means that, you know, we need to wear clothes, we need to eat food, we need to do certain things that keep us healthy, that support us, you know, in doing functional things, whether it's you know, driving a car instead of being able to astral project ourselves to another location. We just don't quite seem to be there yet.
Well, you know, it's really important to understand that a tool can be a very empowering thing. As human beings living in this dimension, we depend upon tools all the time. Some of the tools we depend upon, like right now, lighting, the electricity. And if I were to give you a hammer, it's a tool. Some of you might build a house. Some of you might crack a walnut. And some of you might hit your thumb. It's not the hammer's fault. A tool can be a very empowering thing because, for example, with the hammer, when you're done building the house, you built the house, not the hammer. And today we're working with tools for every aspect of our life. You wouldn't be seeing this without that tool called electricity, without that tool called a camera, without, you know, all the aspects that go into this. And yet the way we generate the electricity is not such a positive thing for our body. The cars that we use to drive us around create pollution. So a lot of the tools we're using, it'd be hypocritical to say we don't need tools for our spiritual development when we're using them for every other aspect of our being. And they are also producing aspects of pollution that block our consciousness, that block the flow of energy. So we almost need a technology to overcome the technology that we're using. And it's also, there's a little bit of ego involved in this whole thing. Because we have, especially in America, this Horatio Alger complex. I can do it myself. I can pull myself up by my own bootstraps. I don't need the help of anyone, especially when it comes to my spiritual, my conscious development. I can do it myself. And, you know, that's ego. We need all the help we can get. All the guides that we have, all the beings on the higher levels, the more you open up to them, the more they can support you. It's a team effort. The reason we're here as human beings is not to do it by ourselves, but to do it in relationship with each other, in relationship to the earth, in relationship to all plants and animals and the higher dimensional beings. And bottom line, it's also a matter of ignorance, that if we don't understand the way things are coming together, the way we're supported, the way that we need to work with the higher dimensional realms, and that there are things that are blocking those flows, that we can create environments just the way the ancients did, the Mayans, the Egyptians, and going back further in what was going on with the Atlanteans, working with energies that are congruent with the earth. And when you do it properly, it's congruent with the life stream of all that is.
Thank you. I think this is a great place to conclude for tonight. This has been recorded. We'll send out, hopefully, we will send out the recording via email. And please send us an email. We'd love your suggestions. We really appreciate that a lot. And I hope you'll take advantage of a coupon that we'll send you to get 15% off. And thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Indeed, indeed. And blessings.
Blessings.